Welcome to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with a wide range of music personalities, from rock and roll Hall of Famers to Grammy winners and today's rising stars. Recorded in St. Louis, Missouri, now here's your host, Aaron Perlett of Atomic Junk Shop.
Jason Bonham's name is synonymous with rock royalty. He's a Grammy winner who's played legendary shows with the living members of Led Zeppelin, toured with Sammy Hagar, leads his own band, Bonham, and recently has played with Foreigner and UFO, among others. Most recently, he's got a smoking hot new album out with a supergroup, Black Country Communion, that he helped start back in 2010 with our past guests, Joe Bonamassa, the legendary Glenn Hughes, and Derek Sheridan. Jason, welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate having you on the Loadout.
Thank you very much. It sounds, when you start reading my the past, it's even the present is a mouthful. So if you start adding in the other previous things, it becomes quite a wow. Yeah. Yes. One of the strangest things is I used to be quite have an opinion about people that moved from band to band when I was young. Maybe just because my dad was just fortunate one to find that, that band and then, be with it till his death. But and now I'm now I'm 58. I go, well, you know what? It's not too bad at all. I'm fortunate. You don't get bored playing anybody else's songs. You move on before you do. But here we are now. As I said, we started Black Country Communion back in 2010 as a kind of a one-time thing. We never really thought past the first album. So when we got to the second album, we went, we better go on tour. And then the third album and then it was, I think Joe's career blew up huge. And it kind of then it started to just be like a side project. But the greatest thing was, which happened when we just did a couple of shows, was Joe texted the group back. We have a group text and said, you know what, I feel that we need to do some more shows. He goes, I don't like the fact we left it and it wasn't the best performance we could ever give. Two shows it was just tough to get back into that groove with just two shows. And the fact that we'd rehearsed in January for shows in March, which was very bizarre to do because everybody was so busy. So that's the good news is, looks like we're going to be going on the road next year for a full length tour. So it did something by doing this new album and doing the shows. It brought back the desire again. And I think we all would wanted to do it. We just were afraid Joe would say no. So this time, I think Joe's at a position in his life where he can afford to take off time from being Joe Bonamassa and be Joe Bonamassa and go and shred if he wants to,
Yeah. It's funny. When I was doing some research before our conversation, I saw the term, someone referred to you as Journeyman Jason Bonham, to get back to your point earlier about playing. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know if that applies to him. There's a certain Journeyman to me is, someone who's kind of on a level professionally where they haven't kind of achieved a certain stature. But I mean, I think most people consider you one of the best drummers in the world. So I don't know if that's a really good term.
Well, at least I like to think I get my name gets brought into a group of the greatest drummers in the world every now and again. I'm like guilty by association sometimes. I get it. There are a lot of people out there probably would still look at what I've done and go, oh, he hasn't really done it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, 4 number one albums doesn't count for anything anymore. And in this day and age, you didn't sell, if you're comparing me to Led Zeppelin started, yeah, I didn't make it at all. It's they were that one, the element of the supergroup, which just at the time, and when you look back, was just so an easy form for them. They just got together and wanted to play. And that was as easy as Led Zeppelin was. And they had a guy like Jimmy Page who knew what he wanted and knew what he wanted the sound to go, and a vision. And then before you know it, 11 years later, it was gone. So for me, I'm fortunate that I went through I got to it in my, I think, early 30s, right before I gave up drinking and got sober, where I was ready to throw the towel in because I felt I hadn't, my success had come early. And so all of a sudden, in like the early days of Bonham in '89, and I suddenly took that wayward spiral of thinking, yes, I deserve this. I've worked hard. Um, and the best thing that ever happened to me was grunge thing happened while we were taking 2.5 years to write the second album. So nobody cared about us anymore. And that needed to, for me, that needed to happen to me. That I needed to be like suddenly shaken again and going, hey, kid, you just, you're at the tip of an iceberg. You've got to work. You've still got to work hard. So, I like to think I went from the van, was it the van loading gear into the tour bus to the private jet, and then went straight back to the van again. So yeah, and I tell that to my son, who started in the music industry a few years ago now, and started, just getting ready to release his first EP. And I said, it's not all, nice. It's you come on the road. He comes on the road for me and does some shows, and I let him come on the bus with me. And the drummer in his band said, "This isn't normal, that Jagger. This isn't like it normally is. Usually it's a smell, and there's five of us or six of us in a 15-seat passenger van, and we're sleeping in there. We're washing at the truck stops." And he said, this is it. So yeah, I might have to just throw it out there and put him in the van one day and just get him to start following around.
Yeah, it's a tough life on the road. I mean, I've been there and staying in shitty hotels and driving in tight confines and loading all your gear up in and out. And it's it's not a lot of times what it is made out, the rock and roll lifestyle is made out to be, especially,
Yeah. Even at the higher level, when you can get nice hotels and you get the nice travel, I always say to Sam, it's that one thing when you got the jet and you've got then an opportunity to get somewhere. Sammy sometimes likes to go back home, so which is fine. But if you're with him on the jet, you're then traveling 4 hours after a show back to a place that means you've got to get up early the next day to get back on a plane to go back out to another gig. I'm much prefer the old tour bus thing for me now. I'm quite happy to wake up at the next place. You know what I mean? It's nice. But I miss, and I don't know if you do you remember the beginning when you played and it wasn't about a paycheck. You didn't give a shit about what you were getting money wise. It was about getting a gig
yeah,
and
small
playing
money.
in front of people. All you want to do is play in front of people. So I my first ever band, we opened up for like Ted Nugent, Meatloaf, AC/DC, Crocus, um, Queen, like just literally Def Leppard. We took every gig that came in where we knew there was going to be people, and we drove anywhere we had to get there, um, just to play in front of people because that was that's all we wanted to do. And we did those gigs where we were supposed to be Motley Crue opening up for AC/DC, and it wasn't Motley Crue, it was us. And we were a very different band to Motley Crue, and the French were not that great and not very nice to us. So the niceties now, when you fast forward to where we are and the thing. So if I'm a journeyman, then yeah, now I think we're playing with Joe and the people like I have that. I have Sammy, Michael Anthony, Joe Satriani, Summer Tour, Van Hagar. My own my Led Zeppelin evening has become, and like next week I'm up playing with Billy Joel, opening up for him at a 50,000 venue, sold out. It's you know, so then yeah, I'm enjoying the journey, and just it's one of those things.
But wait a minute, what about the Steel Dragon years? I mean,
Oh, see, yeah, I forgot about those. Well, that was the end of my drinking years. So very that was the when the guy I said, "Give me my character," then the director said, "You're an alcoholic drummer," and my wife said, "So there's no acting involved then. It's just it's
no,
like,
I'm
oh yeah,
it's funny. So for those listening who don't know what we're talking about, the movie Rockstar with Marky Mark. Uh,
Yeah,
Jason was the drummer of the band Steel Dragon.
it
Uh,
was, it was, it was. It's funny. There's an insurgence. There's been TikToks and things and Instagrams put up with little clips from the movie. And my buddies always send me the clip of, and my son will always send me the one bit that goes when Mark comes in from the break and hands us everybody a cassette. And we all, and me and the main guy look at each other and like, and it was like, have a word with him when you go, you know what? You know, and he goes, well, yeah, I know you and Ace write most of the songs. And I go, not most of the songs, all of the songs. Yeah, not most of the writing, all of the writing. And that just it tickled me that because originally I'm Zach was me. So in the film, the original script, because it's weird that a drummer would be a leader, in some ways, the leader, apart from Metallica, of course, would be the leader of the band in that era. It would be the two guitar players that probably
yeah,
wrote everything. So they actually went, okay, we're going to change it up. You're going to be AC, and Zach's going to be have the talking role of the drummer. So yeah, that was a fun project to do. Well, at the same time, the amount of waiting around you do, to play, you can sometimes get there at 5:30 in the morning, and at 7 o'clock in the evening, you still haven't been called.
mm,
So there's definitely something about the acting life that was way less fun than being a musician. And so once again, me and Zach found ways to entertain ourselves by at the start of the day, they would empty Carlsberg bottles of beer out and fill them full of alcoholic free beer.
yeah.
And we had a guy working for us that was then emptying the alcoholic free beer back out and putting the real beer back in.
That's hilarious. I'm curious. We um, we had Devin Allman on the show a couple years ago, and obviously there's some differences to your situation, but Devin is the son of someone who kind of cut this legendary swath in music.
Yeah,
Um, and I think I made the correlation of it's kind of like being like being Michael Jordan's son and playing basketball. I,
yeah. Like Jacob Dylan, and Wallflowers. You got um, you know Julian.
yeah.
Julian, a dear friend of mine. That's
Has that
it.
been a huge stress on you though? Like
Yeah, I
throughout
mean
your early years, maybe?
I think if anything, there was a because I lost my dad at such an early age at 14. He was on such a pedestal to me that I think at first I was any kind of comparison was good. I was like, oh, fantastic, just to be talked about like the same as him. So I'd emulate that with both the drinking and smashing things up, and it all seemed that was the stories of my old man. As Jimmy pointed out later on in life, maybe you should have focused more on the drumming, John, than the bonzo, the guy that was having to do a few things. Um, but that was, I had to go through that myself. But I would talk to Julian about it right at the beginning when he just started out, and I didn't get to talk. And he was the only one I really. And Zach Starkey, he was a dear friend of mine and still is. But we were very close in our, I'd say, in our early 20s. So we would always get together at parties and woke up many a time sofa opposite each other on a sofa, um, and like going, "What happened?" So it was, and we would have those conversations of like, and he would have the different thing was him was his dad's still alive, Zach. So we'd always go, you don't know what it's like. He goes, you don't know what it's like to have the one that's still alive. So you trying to make a name for yourself with one that passed who's so legendary, but one that's such a legend and still alive is you kind of always, they always want to know about him and more than him. So it depends in the mood you are at the time in life. For me now, I'm kind of, hey, he was in one of the biggest bands in the world, if not the biggest. He was without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most influential drummers of the last 50, 60 years. So what the fuck? You can't run away. You can't run away. You
Yeah,
can't go,
you
I'm
can't
not
hide from
gonna
that
like
stuff.
it. Yeah. You can't suddenly stamp your feet and go, no, I don't want you to ask any questions about that. You know,
Yeah.
you come across as a dick. And that's the sad part about it. I love talking about my own man and love his, I don't have to talk about his accomplishments because they stand on their own. But yeah, it is something you go through life. People expect my son is going to have the same problem, and he goes out, he doesn't use the last name, he just uses his middle name. So he has Jagger Henry. And it's for the reason of, he goes, if I say Jagger Henry Bonham, they think I'm going to be like this.
Yeah.
And he goes, and there's nothing worse than disappointment when I hear my music because it's such a different genre and different vibe. He goes, and I like his approach. He goes, they'll find out soon enough. Once people look me up or find out more about me.
Yeah.
But for his original breakthrough, he'd like to try and get it where it's being played because they like it rather than because it's got Bonham written on it.
It alleviates the
Because,
expectation as well,
yeah,
probably.
it's one of those things. It takes away because there are those trolls out there that suddenly listen to it. I post stuff on my thing of my son, and because it's so different, they go, "Oh my God, John Bonham would turn in his grave if he knew if his grandson was playing music like this." And I'm like, you know what, you know, go back, get back up from the basement, go and say hi to your mom again upstairs, and
Go fuck
just
yourself.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think, I'm curious about something. As a recovering alcoholic myself, I've been sober about 5.5 years. I certainly can relate to some of that.
Congrats.
When I quit drinking, though, I you look in the mirror and you're left with kind of the ugliness that's left behind of what maybe was driving the drinking. And I went all the way back to my childhood in trying to a period of self-examination. Do you feel like, and you mentioned this before, do you feel like trying to mimic your father, um, his legend,
Everything. Yeah.
is it, did that, do you feel like that is what kind of got you on that pathway towards alcoholism that you had to pull yourself out of?
Um, I would definitely say that made it seem that it was okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Everybody's supposed to do this.
what we
Doesn't
yeah,
guys.
what we have to forget, what we often forget is here when all the great stories that we have, and it makes people laugh, and I tell them when we do the Zeppelin thing, because that's why I like to make it personal and tell the stories, is that he lost his life through it. You know, let's not sugarcoat it. He
Yeah.
died because of his abuse at 32. Now I'm 58 and I still feel like a child. Sadly, I don't look like one anymore, but I kind of still feel like a big kid inside. And,
Yeah.
you know, I just won't eat gummy bears in front of grown adults anymore, or just hide them in the car. So, it's like,
When you bang on
um,
something, for a living, it's hard not to feel like a kid, right?
yeah, I mean, it is, I know, do porn stars feel like kids?
The only one I've ever interviewed is Ron Jeremy,
Oh,
and
I know, good old Ron.
well, so I know you've got a lot going on. Before we started, you were telling me a little bit um, about your relationship with Sammy Hagar. I know when you first started playing with Sammy and Michael, one of the big deals for you was that you absolutely idolized Alex Van Halen,
Oh, yeah.
and I know he was a huge influence on you. What has that relationship and experience been like? As I know you're about to head back out on the road with Sammy, but what is that like? Because you were talking a little bit about what like a good positive force he is to be
Yeah.
around.
So for me, we've been playing some of the songs we're doing in the summer. I've been with Sammy at 10 years, believe it or not, 10 years. So at first, because it was all sporadic and it didn't work, Sammy was one of these, he never like does it in usually in a big block. It's like spread out over a year. So it never felt like we were doing that many shows really. But when I look at it, we were probably still doing 35 to 40 shows a year. So, and then some years we were doing way more. So we do tours, depending if we made it an album and things. It's not until now that I'm really conscious because of the emphasis they're putting on the Van Hagar, the Van Halen stuff, that I'm really going back to re-listen to it all over again, even though I've been playing some of them for 10 years, because I don't know, I feel like, what if, I know Sammy has reached out and invited, there'll be guests coming to the different shows and doing, guest spots. So I'm kind of, I don't know, a little nervous in the back of my mind that wonder if Alex, people post stuff, if Alex has seen me play. There's a weird thing, like a kid and a not a parent, but like one of his idols. It's like when I got to work with Phil Collins, it was the greatest moment in my life, whether it was 3 weeks rehearsal and we didn't go any further than that. But to be chosen to play drums with Phil, for Phil, was my dream come true, because he was another major influence to me. So I got to do all the Phils that I knew and loved and get paid for it from the guy himself, which was the greatest feeling ever. So that kind of thing, when you do it, so you're going, wow, if Alex is going to watch this, you better not fuck these bits up. You better, and then what bits do you want to like go to him like, hey, you like this? So there's been a certain way of swagger in certain things that I go, well, I kind of like this. And then Mike always says, well, Jason, you just got to play like yourself, because Alex was always trying to play like your old man anyway. And that was his influence. So there's going to be an element into it. It happened to me at the O2. I was getting caught up in the fine detail of the recorded performances of my father, and kind of then it made me sound like I was static and like stuck in the way I was playing. So it's one of those things. You just got to relax and just be able to play. If I can do these tour like we've done the last 10 years, it's going to be an amazing experience.
And for those,
that's the thing with fun. Yeah.
And for those who don't know what you're talking about, the O2, you're talking about the Ahmet Ertegun tribute concert where you played with the remaining members of Led Zeppelin, and it was honestly one of the most anticipated shows in in music history, quite frankly.
That show.
Yeah, that show.
Yeah.
And hence the Grammy for Best Rock Album.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Which was bizarre. If I've got one thing that my father never had, is a Grammy. He never got given one in his lifetime. So it's for him. I always say, I did it with his band anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But
is that one of those really cool things though? Like a lot of people are like, oh, these awards aren't a big deal, but I would think that having a Grammy on your shelf is pretty fucking cool. Like once you get beyond like the pomp and circumstance of it, it says.
I mean, we always say we do it for ourselves. Yeah, but when you get older, you realize you got to do it for yourself and for your mortgage and for your so and to pay bills and for your life insurance and for your so and to look after your kids when you pass away, and then but then those little things that aren't monetized, or they're just these days, to get a gold album or anything is very rare because of the way the streaming is now. You have to do it's all on streaming. So,
or you got to be named Beyonce or Taylor, one of those two.
Yeah, exactly. One of those kind of vibes. So I have, when they do come through, those kind of those moments when you are admired or given something, you're rewarded for something that you did, then great. I'm proud of that night. It just represents to me the night. It represents to me the 6 weeks build up that we had rehearsing together for me, just to be with them as a grown adult and be around them 6 weeks was probably more than I'd been with them in the last 35 years. So that was the coolest thing,
Yeah.
to talking, talking to them on a 6 week level in between what we were doing, and just picking their brains about, come on, and what happened really on so and so? What did you really do? And who did this and what did that? And they were like going, okay, you can ask 2 questions a day and we'll tell you. So
Two
I
a
was
day.
like,
That is
yeah, two a day.
all right. So
No, that was the hardest thing, is trying to remember. Each night I'd be up all night going, looking in the archives and trying to figure out what I'd want to know.
all right. So,
Yeah.
since you opened the door for that, I got to ask you what this is the last Led Zeppelin question I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Why do you think? What is your suspicion of why Plant does not want to go back and do Led Zeppelin again, other than a show like that?
That, without me going into full detail, I had a good conversation with him right after the event. Well, I would say the February, after we did it, and there was way more to it. And Robert gets the rap all the time because he's the one publicly that will say it,
Yeah.
but he doesn't tell you all the details of why he said no. So I will leave you at that. As I said, now when I look back, it would have been the greatest thing in the world to do, because we were so, I always say, if we were that good on that one night, opening night, oh my God. Like Joe said the other day, imagine what we're going to be like on show 5. Imagine how better it will get as you
Yeah.
start playing more and more. So, well, that was always the hardest thing to walk away from, just knowing if we can do it that well on one night. Everyone was playing so well. It just was magical,
Yeah.
to them. And for those little hiccups as John Paul Jones says, yeah, it was a great first night. Do you imagine what it would be like? Um, but I'll leave with this. So one of the questions I asked was, did my father really chop up his room with a samurai sword, as the fable says?
Yeah.
And they all look at each other and went well, tell him. And John Paul Jones went, actually, that was me. And I went, like, wow, like, what, John? And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, your dad fell asleep. And he goes, and I took the sword out of his hand and chopped up the room. So he thought he did it.
That's great. That's great.
That's
That's
like, that's like really getting to trash a room, and knowing that the guy you trashed the room of, he wasn't going to remember he didn't do it. And he would just be thinking, cool, I trashed the room, without even actually doing anything. So
that is hilarious. It reminds me of Rod Stewart once spilled the beans about there was that rumor about him like in the I think it was like maybe late 70s, early 80s, where that he had to go to the emergency room and they had to pump semen out of his stomach and whatever. And and he basically said it was a story made up by his publicist because he had another problem going on, and the publicist wanted to basically just distract people from what had really happened.
that's one hell of a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Let's circle back and wrap up with Black Country Communion because as I mentioned at the onset, I've listened to the entire record. This thing is absolutely smoking. I mean,
Thank you.
it is a just a great rock and roll record, and obviously, the four of you are so immensely talented. Uh, Talk about you mentioned magic before with Zeppelin. There's in listening to the studio production, there is some unquestioned magic that the four of you bring to this collaboration.
Well, thank you. The strangest thing is, I gotta give up kudos to, you say 4 of us. There's 5 with Kevin. Kevin is he is the glue. We are the puzzle board that will we might be the he's the one that kind of puts it together. Because when we go in there, when like this album and like all the albums, when we record, we go in there with nothing. There's no real demos. There's no demos of anything done before. If we do anything, it's listening to an acoustic guitar on an iPhone of an idea that somebody's had, or Glenn's humming an idea. And then that's it, right? Let's go and record it. And you're like, what? Um, so literally then we'll just spend, an hour arranging it and putting all the parts together what we want. And then it's okay, record. Or sometimes it's like, okay, I've got it. Us trying to figure it out, Kevin's constantly recording and he'll go, I've got it. And we're like, go next. And we're like, what? We haven't even listened back. He goes, no, we'll listen back at the end. So I'm always dubious that like, oh my God, am I going to be okay with everything? Certain songs come easier than others, some are harder. And to me, I can instantly, when I hear the album, I know which ones that, for me, my favorite moment in Love and Faith is at the beginning of Love and Faith. I am in my head singing "Try a Little Help for Your Friends." So when the drum fill comes in at the beginning of the Hammond organ doing and I go blah 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 blah, I'm completely going. I'm going to play "Cry a Little Help for My Friends" to the same of when we're doing. People always say, "Oh, it's like the Zeppelin trampled underfoot," and I'm like, "No, we were jamming Superstitious at the time when we did that because of Glenn's love for Stevie Wonder, and that was the same song that Zeppelin were jamming when they wrote "Trampled Underfoot." So,
Yeah.
those are the ones that "Open Road" is one of my favorite, last track on the album because of it's like Martha and the Vandellas kind of vibe to it. It's um, yeah, I just there's different parts. Red Sun for the. I was there going, are you sure about this, guys? This is awfully audio slow. That I'm a big Rage Against Machine fan and audio slave, and probably have more knowledge of their albums than the other guys in the band. So when they do something and they're totally oblivious to, I'm like going, that's very Rage, or that's very, and they're going, what? And I'm going, yeah, hold on, I gotta play something.
It's funny you say that. So first, for Kevin, we're talking about Kevin Shirley, who's Joe's longtime collaborator and producer. But when I listened to the entire album in its entirety, I felt like you guys had this kind of a mashup between Zeppelin and Soundgarden. And so it's
Yeah.
funny you said Audio Slave that
Well, that's then we're going in the right direction. That is a total for me in my head with Glenn's voice.
yeah,
I see that and some of the melodies, and Glenn loves Chris too.
he's
So
got a real Cornell feel. Yeah, no
yeah,
question.
I absolutely one of the biggest regrets in my life that I years and years and years wanting to collaborate something, even if it was one song. I was begged, steal, and borrow him, and I just never got round to it. And the next thing I know, he passed away, and so sad. I was actually in Seattle when he died at thing after playing In My Time of Dying. So I have a huge love and respect for Chris Cornell and the band, Audio Slave, as well as Soundgarden. From the moment I first heard his voice. But I've got to play with Tom and got to know Brad, the drummer, really well. And if, for instance, I said, "Oh, whatever happened to the song Hide the Gun?" And he went, "How do you know about that song?" I went, um, "I just do. Somebody played it me." And he goes, um, "Well, it never came out. We never released it. So how did they play it you?" And I went, "I think you left the CD at the photographer's at the photo shoot, and he played it me. And I made a copy of it, and I have a copy of it." And he went, "Oh my God." And it's I feel absolutely blessed that I actually have a track that was going to be the track one of the first Audio Slave album. And they chopped it before it came out and they didn't use it. And it's never been released or on anything ever since. And I have it in my private thing, and it's one of my most played songs. because it was the most obvious thing when you go Rage Against the Machine, Chris Cornell. It was blatantly so much of that with that. I think they actually went, it's too obvious, so we should go for something alternative. So thank you for, if anything, that's one of the biggest compliments you could say to me regarding the band, because in my head, I'm always, when Glenn sings, I'm always, when we do stuff, I'm always hearing Chris, even to one of the songs we didn't finish on the album was something I was working on, that I worked on with Glenn prior. And that was hugely, like, it was like Rustin Cage moment from, so I was, that's a great thing to have. Thank you. I'm really pleased that you see that.
Well, Jason, I think we're all pretty excited to hear the new Black Country Communion record. Is it V or is it 5? What is it? Everyone.
Well, all I'll leave with this. We have quite a laugh when we have, one of the things about a band that not many people know. For people that don't hang around with each other 24/7 or don't see each other as often, when we get back in a room, we are the biggest ball breakers, piss takers, fun makers, practical jokers, like everything and the above, everything to get a laugh and to make it fun and to have just, literally, sometimes I have Kevin like tears and stomach pain, and Joe, they just can't believe I will say certain things. And we are one of those, we are one of those bands that will be, no matter what people ever think about, if we don't get along, we get along really well. It's just whether we can take each other's ball breaking is one of the hardest things. We are hard at each other, but it's very cool.
The ball breaker extraordinaire he is, Jason Bonham. Jason, thank you so much, and good luck with Black Country Communion. Good luck with Sammy, and all the best to you, my man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Sorry for being a bit late.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, hosted by Atomic Junkshot frontman Aaron Perlett. Find all of our episodes and more at loadoutmusic.com.